Hi guys, today's flip notes are on the Protestant Reformation. As always, make sure that you are following along in your packet and jotting things down, adding extra information where it needs to go, and that sort of thing. If you have any questions, send me a message, come see me in class, shoot me an email, whatever. So, the Protestant Reformation, which takes place at the end of the Renaissance, is a massive change in religion and culture originally in Europe, begins in Germany, but then ultimately it's all over the entire world. So the most important thing to remember is when we're talking about Protestants, we're talking about all Christians who are not Catholics. So in World War I, you talked about the split of the Catholic Church, the schism between the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox Church. We're actually going to take the Roman Catholic Church and then splinter it again to where you now have, in today's society, we have Catholics and we have Protestants. So people who are Baptist or people who are Methodist, people who are Brethren or go to the Church of God or any of the non-denominational churches. All of those are Protestants. So people who believe in Jesus, people who worship Jesus, but who do not attend a Catholic church and follow the Catholic hierarchy and the teachings of the Pope. So remember that the Roman Catholic Church, which is led by the Pope, right? This guy right here, he's the Pope, right? And today's Pope is Pope Francis, is going to, for centuries, dominate all religious thoughts, religious actions, also a lot of political thought, political actions. And because the church didn't really want to change its policies, it resisted a lot of change. It was slow to change its policies. We're going to have a time period called the Protestant Reformation, where they are reforming, reform in Reformation, they are reforming the Christian church into something that was more reflective of the culture of the time. So it's going to lead to new political structures as well as new economic structures. Excuse me. So there's going to be a lot of argument over interpretation of the Bible. So when scholars were studying in the church, so when they were in seminary school or when people were historians and they were going through the Bible, they oftentimes will read a passage and interpret it differently. This is why we have different versions of the Bible in print today. And those disputes, those arguments, those disagreements over that interpretation and the authority of the Pope, that word papal, we're going to talk about papal a lot, that's the authority of the Pope, are going to lead to this separation between the Catholic Church and Protestants. So there's a lot of conflict about the authority of the church. So this is basically saying, like, there are groups that are going to be upset, that are going to go against, right? They're going to challenge, they're going to go against the power of the church, the power of the Pope, the ability of the Pope to tell anybody really what to do. So number one are merchants. Merchants are going to view this issue of usury as a problem in the way that economics is functioning. So usury is charging interest. So, and not just charging interest on a basic rate, but charging high interest. So the Catholic Church is very against usury as a concept. You are not allowed to charge interest. And hearkening back thousands of years, the Jewish people were not allowed to charge interest to other believers of Judaism, but were theologically, which is a fancy word for saying according to the church, allowed to charge interest to people who took loans out that were not Jewish. So there's this background of who could and could not take loans out. And according to the Catholic Church, no Christian could do this. No Christian could charge another Christian interest. Well, when you're a merchant and you're wealthy, right, you have the money, people are coming to you and they want loans, and you want to be able to make money on that loan. So there are a bunch of merchants who are like, well, who are you, Pope in Italy, who's never even been here? I don't know anything about you. Why do you get to say how I do or do not get to make my money? So there's a lot of merchants who are going to be like, I'm not so sure about this inability to charge interest thing. So in Germany and in England, the nobles were very frustrated about the Italian domination of the church. So what this meant is that for centuries, the vast majority of popes were from Italy instead of from any other region, really, of Europe. In history, at least when this video was made, there have been 266 popes that ever, like there's been 266 popes, and of those, we know that at least 190 of them are from the Italian peninsula, from modern day Italy. So that is more than 70% of the popes in history have been from Italy. So people who are in other countries were very frustrated with this, particularly Germany and England, because the Italian political structure was being influenced by the papacy and vice versa. So church doctrines, church teachings were coming out that were benefiting Italy rather than benefiting Christianity as a whole. The next conflict is the conflict over church power. So in the aftermath of the fall of Rome, which is 476, there's a lot of breakup and turmoil that happens throughout Italy, and what emerges is that the central section of modern day Italy, the central section of the Italian peninsula, is now going to be ruled as a kingdom run specifically by the Pope. So that meant that, number one, the Pope is a king in his own right. So he is not just the leader of the faith, he also has a country to look after. So for one hand, the Pope is a king. He's running his own government. And then also, he anoints a lot of the... Anoint is spelled like this, A-N-O-I-N-T. That was terrible, and I'm sorry. He anoints a lot of the rulers of Europe. He actually is part of the crown and a symbol of God giving permission for people to be king. So realistically, all of the kings of Europe have to listen to the Pope. So he is the person in charge of all the countries of Europe. And of course, kings are not going to be happy about having to give up their power to someone else. And then finally, we have church corruption. So there's a lot of corruptions going on. In fact, while I'm recording this video, there has been, in the last couple of days, some new reports. There was a 900-page report recently filed about church corruption in 2018, the last several decades of child abuse and that sort of thing, child sexual abuse. But this has been going on for a very long time. And so, for instance, church corruption in this case is where they sold indulgences. So indulgences are pardons. They are pardons for your sins, but you have to pay for them. And you can pay for them in a few different ways. So, for instance, like if you had sinned and you went to confession, you could be asked to pay X number of dollars to be forgiven for your sins. Or indulgences could be given after your death. So, for instance, if you pass away unexpectedly, your family would then want to make sure that you have been forgiven for your sins, because according to Catholic doctrine, after you die, you wait in purgatory for a specific amount of time atoning for your sins. And if your parents or your siblings or your spouse or whomever paid your indulgences, Your indulgences then would get you out of purgatory and into heaven faster than people who couldn't afford them. And really, it was just a way for the Catholic Church to make more money. It was a fundraiser, essentially, for lack of a better term, only you're fundraising by lying to people about their faith, lying to people about God's teachings according to the Bible, and making a lot of money on poor people, peasants who didn't have a whole lot to start with. So that's it for this section. Stay tuned, and we will have another video that goes over the important people that we talk about for the Protestant Reformation, and then some of the backlash of that Reformation in other places.